Welcome to the channel, friends. If you're someone who loves real stories that stir the soul and challenge the mind, you're in the right place. Every day, we bring you one powerful tale, true or inspired, that makes you think twice about the world we live in. Before we dive into today's unbelievable moment at Buckingham Palace, drop a comment below and tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing this community grow across borders. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's story is even more unforgettable. You won't want to miss it. Teen tried to be funny, ended up crying for his mom in public. It was a cool afternoon in London, the kind where the breeze carries the scent of old stone and the chatter of tourists from every corner of the world. Outside Buckingham Palace, crowds gathered as they always do, phones out, eyes wide, hoping to catch a glimpse of the changing of the guard, or maybe a royal wave from a distant balcony. But today, something different was about to unfold. From across the square, three American teenagers strolled into view like they owned the place. Tyler, 17 years old, led the way with a cocky grin and a puff of strawberry vape curling around his face. He wore a knockoff designer jacket that hung off his shoulders like a cape and walked with a swagger that screamed attention. Right behind him was Brandon, 18, tall and broad-shouldered, his camo cargo pants sagging with every step as if defying gravity. He had a fake British accent he couldn't wait to try out. Bringing up the rear was Eli, the youngest at 16, swallowed up in an oversized hoodie, eyes darting nervously around the crowd, like he wasn't quite sure if this was a good idea. They weren't there to admire the palace or learn about history. No, they had other plans. The kind of plans born from too much confidence and too little respect. "Yo," Tyler said, pointing toward the motionless royal guard stationed outside the gates. "Check this out. Man's really out here dressed like a Christmas nutcracker." Brandon burst out laughing, already drawing a few curious glances from the crowd. Eli gave a half-hearted chuckle, trying to play along but visibly uncertain. Tourists began to notice. Some smirked, others frowned. A few raised their phones, thinking they were about to witness a harmless prank. Tyler stepped closer to the guard, taking another long drag from his vape. "Bet he keeps his tea and biscuits in that hat," he joked. The laughter continued, but not everyone was amused. A mother nearby pulled her child a little closer. An elderly couple exchanged a look and walked away. Still, the boys were only getting started. What they didn't realize was that Buckingham Palace wasn't just a photo op, it was a symbol. And mocking the men who stood guard in silence, was about to cost them more than just their pride. Tyler's joke still hung in the air, but the crowd's laughter had started to thin. What began as amused curiosity was slowly turning into unease. And yet, the boys didn't notice. If anything, the attention was fueling them. Brandon puffed out his chest like a cartoon peacock and strutted forward, dropping into a laughable attempt at a posh British accent. "Oh, dearest me," he said, hands behind his back. "Shall we take tea with the Queen, lads? Crumpets, anyone?" His voice cracked halfway through, but that only made him laugh harder. Eli, still unsure but unwilling to be the odd one out, chimed in weakly. "No cap, fam," his hoodie sleeves flapping as he gestured vaguely toward the guard. He tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. His hands kept adjusting the hem of his hoodie, tugging and twisting, like he was trying to disappear inside it. The royal guard stood perfectly still, eyes fixed forward, a human statue amid the building tension. But to the boys, that stillness wasn't intimidating. It was a challenge. "You think he's even real?" Tyler said, circling closer now, each step calculated to draw a reaction. "Bet he's just one of those wax museum dummies." He blew another ring of vape smoke, letting it drift toward the guard's face. Some of the tourists began backing away. A mother covered her daughter's eyes. A man in a military veteran's cap stopped walking, his face hardening as he watched the scene unfold. Brandon leaned in, his voice louder now, mocking. "Oi, mate, you guarding the Queen's secrets or just practicing your mannequin game?" A few teenagers still laughed, but it was nervous now, scattered, uncomfortable. The boys didn't hear it. They were too deep in their performance to notice the mood shift. And then Tyler crossed the line. He reached out, fingers twitching like claws, aimed straight at the guard's side. "Let's see if this guy's ticklish," he whispered with a smirk. The air in the square changed. Gasps swept through the crowd. A woman dropped her phone. A man whispered he didn't just, but couldn't finish the sentence. Because in that moment, everyone knew. This wasn't a joke anymore. This was provocation, and something was about to snap. There was a moment, just one breathless, frozen second, where the entire square stood still. Even the pigeons seemed to pause mid-step. Tyler's fingers had just barely made contact, brushing the guard's uniform with a cocky little jab to the ribs. It was meant to be funny. It wasn't. The guard didn't flinch. At first, it seemed like nothing would happen. Tyler smirked and looked back at his friends, expecting laughter, maybe a high five. But the laughter never came. Instead, a strange tension gripped the air, thick, electric, like the moment right before a thunderstorm cracks open the sky. Then it happened. With the sharpness of a military drill, the guard's head snapped toward Tyler. The movement was so precise, so fast, it made people gasp. His eyes locked onto Tyler's face, not with rage, but with something colder. Command, authority, power, the kind that comes from generations of discipline carved into the bones of soldiers. Step back. The words were delivered like cannon fire, deep, controlled, devastating. They rang through the square, bouncing off stone walls and slicing through the air like a blade. Tyler stumbled a step back, stunned. Eli's eyes widened. Brandon stopped laughing. But the guard wasn't done. "You have 3 seconds to remove yourselves from my sight," he said, louder now, "before I show you what real discipline looks like." 1. That single word echoed across the plaza like a countdown to judgment. Heads turned. Phones dropped. A veteran near the fence stood straighter, nodding in quiet respect. A little girl grabbed her mother's hand. Even the teens who'd been recording slowly lowered their phones, faces changing from amused to afraid. 2. This time, the sound was thunder. A flock of pigeons scattered into the sky, startled by the sheer force in his voice. Brandon's smirk vanished. Eli looked like he might bolt. Tyler? He stood frozen, caught between pride and fear, trying to act unbothered, but his hands were shaking. No one wanted to hear 3. But it was coming. And somehow, everyone in that square, tourists, locals, children, elders, knew exactly what that number meant. It wasn't just a countdown. It was a warning, and only fools would ignore it. 3. The word didn't just land. It detonated. It was like someone had flipped a switch. Whatever performance the boys thought they were putting on was over. Reality came crashing in. Eli cracked first. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His face twisted with fear, and then it happened. He screamed, "Mom," in a voice so high and desperate it pierced the heavy silence like a siren. The crowd turned toward him in shock, but Eli was already backing away, stumbling, trying to disappear into his oversized hoodie as tears began pouring down his cheeks. Brandon, whose pants had been hanging by a thread all afternoon, took one step backward and tripped. Down he went, hard. His cargo pants slipped even lower, tangled around his ankles, revealing a pair of bright yellow SpongeBob boxers. His tough guy persona collapsed with him as he scrambled on the ground, red-faced and helpless. But it was Tyler who wore the real crown of shame. The one who led the charge, the loudest, cockiest, boldest of them all, stood there completely frozen. His vape pen slipped from his fingers and hit the pavement with a loud clack. His jaw moved, but no sound came out. The guard's stare was locked on him now, unwavering. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even hatred. It was judgment. And Tyler couldn't handle it. The square was dead quiet. No one laughed. No one even moved. Parents held their children. Elderly tourists stood with mouths slightly open. Veterans, standing straighter than ever, looked on with pride in their eyes. Eli was sobbing. Brandon was crawling backward, pants still down, trying to avoid eye contact with anyone. And Tyler, this self-declared alpha, looked like a kid who'd just realized he'd picked a fight with something ancient and immovable. The guard never raised a hand. He never stepped forward. He didn't have to. His presence was enough, because the weight of centuries stood behind him. Centuries of soldiers who had held that same line, worn that same uniform, carried that same code of silence until respect was earned or enforced. And in that moment, standing there in the center of Buckingham Palace's grand tradition, the boys learned the hard way. You don't mock the Queen's Guard. Not if you want to walk away with your dignity intact. The guard didn't speak again. He didn't need to. With one final razor-sharp turn, he pivoted back into position, chin up, spine straight, rifle at his side. Like nothing had happened. Like 3 arrogant teens hadn't just tried to humiliate him in front of hundreds. But something was different now. His stillness wasn't just discipline anymore. It was victory. For a few heartbeats, the square remained frozen. Eli's quiet sobs filled the silence, his face buried in his hoodie. Brandon sat on the cold stone, desperately trying to pull up his pants without standing. And Tyler, still standing, still pale, hadn't moved an inch since the countdown ended. His hands hung uselessly at his sides, his shoulders slumped. He looked nothing like the bold teen who had strutted into the square minutes earlier. His swagger was gone, shattered. Then, slowly, the crowd began to move. A woman nudged her child forward, whispering something about consequences. A man in a business suit shook his head and walked off. Tourists lowered their phones, most of them too stunned to even review what they had captured. And then, from the far side of the square, it started. A single clap, then another. And then the applause spread, quiet at first, then stronger, building into a wave of respect that echoed against the palace gates. It wasn't for the teens, of course. It was for the man who stood motionless and proud. For the centuries of discipline he represented. For the moment when strength didn't require violence. The boys didn't leave in a group. They couldn't. Eli walked off first, sniffling, his hoodie pulled over his head like a cloak of shame. Brandon stood slowly, still trying to hide his boxers, his eyes downcast. And Tyler? He picked up his vape pen, hands trembling, and turned without a word. No jokes, no last laugh, just silence. As they disappeared into the crowd, the square slowly returned to normal. But it didn't feel the same. Something had shifted. The tourists had witnessed more than just a guard doing his duty. They had seen a line drawn between tradition and disrespect. And they had watched what happens when someone crosses it. No punches were thrown, no sirens were called. But justice had been served. And Buckingham Palace stood as tall as ever. What do you think about what just happened at Buckingham Palace? Were those teens just being foolish? Or did they cross a serious line that deserved the response they got? We want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from and how you would have reacted if you were standing in that crowd. Would you have spoken up, pulled out your phone, or applauded like the rest when the guard reminded everyone what true discipline looks like? This moment wasn't just about a few kids being immature. It was a powerful reminder of what it means to represent something bigger than yourself, whether it's history, honor, or the weight of tradition. So let's talk about it. Do you think the guard handled it perfectly? Should there be stricter rules around public behavior near ceremonial guards? We read every comment, and your thoughts might just shape our next story. So don't be shy. Let your voice be heard. And if you've ever witnessed a moment like this in real life, we'd love to hear your story too. Join the conversation below. This community is all about respect, reflection, and powerful storytelling, and you are a part of it.